503-226-5111. And if we don't use your question tonight, we will keep answering your question each day here at 7 o'clock.
We want to get straight to those questions. We're joined via video chat by Dr. Ken Stedman. He's a biologist at Portland State. And Dr. Stedman, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. These are questions our viewers have sent us. And we know you're an expert in the spread of viruses like the novel coronavirus. And we've heard a lot of theories about how this started. Can you tell us how this one got started?
So exactly how it started, still nobody knows. But one of the great things about this particular coronavirus is it's got a really long sequence, about 300 letters that make up what makes it a virus, really its code, its genome. And just by looking at those letters and comparing them to other viruses that are known, it's pretty clear that this coronavirus has come originally from bats, not absolutely directly from those bats, but the sequences are so similar to each other, there's got to be a bat connection there.
Okay, and Dr. Stedman, I know a lot of people are stuck at home, a lot of people are ordering things online. So a big question we're getting, can the virus live on boxes from Amazon?
So I'm not specifically going to talk about Amazon here, but just boxes in general. There's a nice study that was it's not been published, but it's almost out, where people did a study literally with SARS-CoV-2, so the virus which is causing COVID-19, where they looked at the virus on cardboard and just looked to see how long it could actually survive under those conditions. And it turns out that it really wasn't that long. It was a few hours, and that was with a lot of virus that they put onto the cardboard in the first place. So I think the cardboard is really not an issue unless the person is delivering and just happens to have coughed on it right before they give it to you. But in general, I would say those packages are really very safe.
There was a time not that long ago, a lot of people were concerned about Zika virus and mosquitoes passing that on. One of our viewers wants to know, can mosquitoes pass on the coronavirus?
Absolutely not. This virus is a respiratory virus. You breathe it in, and then it replicates in your lungs, and that's why people are having all these problems. It's a lung problem, but it does not get into your blood. And if it doesn't get into your blood, then there's no way for it to get into a mosquito. Now, mosquitoes are incredibly nasty for other kinds of diseases, but not for this one, thank goodness.
Dr. Stedman, how long does the virus stay active once it's airborne?
Oh, that's a really good question. Again, similar study, which was just put out, this is what's called a preprint, medRxiv, where they looked at, in a very controlled condition, exactly how long the virus could stay in very tiny particles. And these are droplets, again, the moisture that you produce. But it turns out that it's maybe half an hour, and at the very, very longest conditions, about 3 hours. But again, that was under completely controlled laboratory conditions. And so exactly how long it would last in the real world, out in the real environment, is still not entirely clear. But we do know that once someone coughs, they sneeze, it comes out of their mouth, this particle will drop to the ground very quickly, and that's the real reason we should have physical distance. Now, I don't like social distancing. It's physical distance we should be talking about. We want to be connected to each other socially. But that physical distance, that's what allows the particle to drop to the ground. And then if you don't breathe it in, and you're not, as I mentioned before, not licking the floor, then I think we're pretty good shape.
Well, gravity's our friend in that case. Patty wants to know, Dr. Stedman, if her pets can get the virus, and if so, what she can do to keep them safe.
So apparently, pets cannot get the virus, and there was one case, I think, where someone was talking about dogs, but that's really questionable, I think, whether there actually was an infection in this case. And so we all love our pets, and it really does seem that this particular virus, like most viruses, are pretty specific for one particular kind of thing they infect. So I mentioned the bats before. Bats have tons of coronaviruses, but the bats don't get sick. And that's probably what's happening in the case of this particular virus, the SARS-CoV-2, and your pets.
In our last question, Dr. Stedman, we have been getting a lot of questions about cigarette smoke. Can the virus be transmitted through cigarette smoke or, vaping release?
That really does not seem to be the case. These are respiratory droplets. And one of the things about vaping and cigarette smoke, those are very, very, very small particles, and even smaller particles, actually, than we're talking about in terms of what these respiratory droplets are likely to be. So if you think about smoke, it sort of floats around for a while. That's not what happens with these respiratory droplets. They, as Laurel just said, gravity's our friend in this particular case. And that's not so much the case for your cigarette or your vaping.
Dr. Stedman from PSU, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I'm sure we'll check in with you later on.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
You know, a lot of you have been wondering who is getting tested. We hear there's only 40 people a day in Oregon. So who's getting tested for COVID-19? And if you can get a test for yourself.
Yeah, I got a chance to ask Kim Toves with Multnomah County Health about that earlier today. Take a listen.
The healthcare system in general has all come to some consensus around our priorities for testing people. The people who are very seriously ill, hospitalized, or that we may be needing to transfer to some kind of a recuperative care setting, we need to know if they have COVID-19 or not, because if they have a different kind of respiratory infection, we don't want to set them next to someone with COVID-19. So knowing who has that specifically will help us if we need to shelter folks or have folks have some kind of recuperative care. The next most important folks to test are our healthcare workers, because we don't want them to be spreading COVID-19 to other patients coming in, right? So if we have any question about needing to test them, that would be our next priority. Third priority then would be our folks who are our most vulnerable populations to test, that we are concerned about severe illness, who are having respiratory symptoms. Yeah, so hopefully what will happen is that not only will we be relying on the state lab, but we'll have some commercial laboratories up and running, and they're working as fast as they can right now to increase their volume. And then I think that as the healthcare system in general starts to narrow down to only provide essential services to folks who are acutely ill, it will help. And this is the same message that we've been giving out before, that if you're mildly sick, it's more important for you to stay home and to not overwhelm the healthcare system by coming in to find out if you have the virus or not.
All right, thank you so much to Dr. Kim Toves with Multnomah County Health and all of our experts who are helping to answer your questions. We have a few more right here. It says, do I need a prescription to get a test? We're continuing the testing questions here. And are there any drive-through sites in PDX or Southwest Washington? Thank you, Ellen, for that question. So no, you cannot get a prescription for a test, and there are no drive-through sites in PDX or Southwest Washington. Governor Brown said she's not interested in setting up the drive-through test if people would have to sit there for hours and hours. Remember, as we keep saying, Oregon is only testing 40 people a day right now. And our next question has to do with, of course, online shopping. So many people doing that right now. It says Walmart suddenly canceled my online delivery order with no explanation. It won't let me schedule another one. Is this permanent or what? Reached out to Walmart. Their corporate spokesperson got back to me right away. They said they had a big increase in online orders, and so they had to cancel some of them because there just wasn't enough stuff. There wasn't enough items. They said people will now be able to get same day or next day, but they won't be able to, schedule far out, a week or two in advance like they used to in the past. And if you're using any, apps or sites, just expect a lot of people are doing that right now. I know Instacart has a several-day wait and some of the other apps. So just, make sure you take that into account. We want to keep, answering your questions, so please keep them coming. We'll be answering them all week, 7 to 7:30. Laurel?
Thank you, Kristen. Here's another one. Should you have play dates for your kids? Can you get the corona?
KGW.com.
Welcome back. Are people taking this outbreak seriously enough? And how long can we expect the coronavirus to stick around?
Those are just some of the questions I had the chance to ask Dr. Joseph Fair about the bigger picture. He's a doctor and an NBC News science contributor. We have heard from a lot of parents, children are home from schools. Are play dates with other kids okay?
Right now, we're not encouraging play dates just because, even though children themselves are fine from the disease, as far as we've seen out of data from China and Italy and other places where obviously kids have become infected and they've spread the disease, or the virus rather, they have not developed the disease themselves. That being said, they can bring it home to someone who is high risk, or a beloved grandparent or parent in a high risk condition. So one of the more innovative solutions that I've heard to this is, having an agreement with your next door neighbor or someone that you're close to, a family, that your kids will only play with their kids, and you know where they're going to be and who you're going to be with yourself. And that way you establish kind of a circle of security and keep a sense of normalcy with your children.
How long do you see these sorts of measures lasting? A month, 2 months? Do you think 90 days?
It really depends on when we as a nation all get on the same page. We have seen spread to all 50 states, I think with the exception of West Virginia, and I'm sure there are cases there, they just haven't detected them yet. But we've seen spread to all 50 states. So unless we all practice the same social distancing measures, unless we close down things that are non-essential for a period of at least 14 days, and I don't say that lightly because, I grew up in a family that was paycheck to paycheck, and I worked my way through college being a waiter, so I would never recommend those circumstances in any other condition. That being said, unless we do that as a nation, I can foresee this going on for quite a long time. And, we'll see a dip presumably in the summer, just like we do with other colds and flus, but we're going to see a rise coming back in the fall.
Do you think people are taking this seriously?
I think half of the population is taking it seriously, and I think half of the population is not. And I go back to that earlier statement that unless we're all on the same page with it, it's just going to keep spreading. And so you can't shut down certain cities and certain states without doing the same thing in other states, just because with our civil liberties you can travel to and from, and we can't stop it that way.
There is one question we've been getting over and over again that doctors admit they can't answer yet. If you've already had the coronavirus, can you get it again? Here's Dr. Carlos Crespo, a professor of public health at PSU.
We don't know the answer to that because we're barely getting exposed for the first time now. And it's not like we have a lot of cases where we can say, oh yeah, let's see what happened the second time. So I wish I could have an answer, but we don't know.
We've also been getting questions about what your employer can require of you. One viewer asked, can an employer force me to work from home? Dana Underhill, an attorney with the Holland Knight law firm, answered that one for us.
You likely do need to stay home if your employer asks you to, although home is relative. Your employer can't require where you go if you're asked to leave the work environment, but the employer can exclude you from the work environment. And that's happening in two different circumstances, really three, maybe more. First of all, if there's a diagnosis in the workplace or a suspected diagnosis in the workplace, the employer is obligated under Oregon law and federal law, Washington law as well, to provide a safe work environment free from reasonably known hazards. I think we would all agree that COVID-19 falls within that category. And so if there's a diagnosis on site or if there's a suspected diagnosis, and as a matter of the safety of the workforce, the employer asks you to stay home, they're entitled to do that.
We've also been hearing from you out of work because of the businesses closing temporarily. We talked with Gail Krummenauer with the Oregon Employment Department about your options for filing for unemployment.
When a payroll employee loses their job through no fault of their own, they can get unemployment insurance benefits, usually if they are able to take a job, available to take a job if it's offered to them, and actively seeking work. Now, in the case of a temporary layoff, we see that we have the situation where affected workers could receive unemployment insurance benefits without actively seeking employment with another employer. They do have to maintain active communication with their current employer and be available and go back to work when they are called back.
So our reporter Catherine Cook is working on a more in-depth story about your unemployment options, and that'll be coming up later on KGW News at 11.
And we have more answers for you next, including why our post office is still open and is it safe to go to a swimming pool?
Welcome back. We're continuing to answer your questions, including why are post offices still open? So the person that wrote in about this was concerned about the workers. We reached out to USPS. They said that workers can use gloves. The CDC is not recommending masks, so you will not see those workers wearing masks. And also, it's important to note the CDC and World Health Organization and an expert at the top of the 7 o'clock all said there's no evidence that the coronavirus is being passed by the mail or by boxes. Next, is swimming still safe? Great question, and one we've received several times. So according to experts, yes, swimming is still safe. You want to shower before you swim and after you swim. And according to the Pool Water Treatment and Advisory Group, they checked with experts and they say that the coronavirus would be inactivated at the levels of chlorine used in swimming pools. Last question, are my taxes still due April 15th? Got an answer for you, and that's no. So the IRS announced today that all of us are getting an extension. So if you owe less than $1 million, you have 3 months, a 3-month extension. So that was just announced today. And Laurel, we love answering these questions. It really helps all of us out. So I hope people keep texting us.
With that information about chlorine, maybe we all need to live in swimming pools, it sounds like.
I was thinking that.
We've talked about the symptoms of coronavirus, but it's really hard to picture what it's like to actually have it. When we come back, hear from a nurse who was diagnosed with COVID-19, how she went from thinking she just had a cold to rushing to. A lot of people are curious about what it's like if you actually do get the coronavirus.
So a nurse who was diagnosed with COVID-19 talked on the Today Show about when she first realized that something was seriously wrong.
I realized it was something serious. My husband and I both started having fevers on March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then I didn't start feeling really bad until probably the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. And on the 8th is when I asked him to take me to the emergency room just because I felt like I wanted to collapse every time I took a deep breath. It was short of breath for me. And then my lower lobes and my down by my ribs started hurting really bad.
Boy, I hope none of us experiences that. You know, this time of year, a lot of people are dealing with other things like allergies. Others may have another issue that makes them cough or sneeze. You've probably noticed if that happens in public right now, there are some dirty looks. We asked clinical psychologist Aziz Gazipura about that social shaming.
In this time where there's a lot of fear, people are going to make a lot of assumptions. You know, if someone coughs, they may assume that it's the coronavirus. And the fact is we just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. Here's the thing about the coronavirus. A lot of the people that have it, you don't even know that they have it. So there's it's easy to point at the finger at someone. I think the important thing to realize is that someone judging you in public doesn't affect you really in any way. It's emotionally you're uncomfortable, but there's no actual threat or danger there. And you know, my expertise is in social anxiety, and the clients I help are concerned about others' opinions no matter what. So we all might have anxiety about this. I'd say to just basically go about your business. You can ignore it. And also remember that if there's any anger or judgment coming at you, that it's coming from a place of fear. Underneath, they're just scared. And if you meet it with anger back, it just escalates. But if you can just say, hey, I understand you're concerned, and not meet them with that anger, but instead meet them with compassion, then it'll dissolve.
Thank you for joining us tonight. KGW is committed to continuing coverage on the coronavirus outbreak.
If you still have questions, our past stories may answer them for you. You can go to kgw.com/facts-not-fear to get caught up on all of the latest information in all of our stories.
Thank you for watching. Join us again tonight at 11. Have a good evening.
The all-new Silverado HD adds to the legendary capability of the strongest, most advanced Silverados ever. With best-in-class camera technology and larger, more functional beds than any competitor. The only truck that can compare to